Welcome to Smart Brown Voices, your weekly podcast featuring diverse voices from around the world, giving you insights on how others made it big in their respective fields. Now sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready to be inspired. And don't forget to use hashtag #SmartBrownVoices to share insights, moments of wisdom, and things from the show that inspire you. And now, here's your host, social media nerd and technology activist, Mr. Mike Street.
Hey, what's up? It's Mike Street here with Smart Brown Voices, and we're underneath of the tent here at 66th Street, Lincoln Center at New York Fashion Week. And we're here with Tyrone Farley, and he's a fashion blogger from True Fashionista Now. So Tyrone, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you start the blog True Fashionista Now?
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me. It's such an exciting time of the year for fashion. It's a time that I always look forward to. Fashion Week under the tent at Lincoln Center. So you want to know how I got started? Believe it or not, I got started taking photos on the streets of Harlem. I love fashion, and fashion specifically from the 1930s. And Harlem is the only place to me right now that I connected with in finding those kinds of fashion. So I started taking photos of people on the street because it has unique individuals that dress a certain way that is totally unique from anywhere else I see all the fashions. And that's how I got started.
So what was it about Harlem in particular that really kind of piqued your interest?
Harlem is unique. It's unique in the way people wear whatever they wear, whether it's a hat, whether it's a sneaker, whether it's a scarf. It's the way, whether it's a simple tilt, whether it's a color, whether it's unique pieces, mixing and matching fashion. It's what got started me with fashion blogging, specifically True Fashionista Now. Specifically, that name came about because I believe an individual who is a fashionista has to have their individual style. It's not about dressing designer pieces such as Prada and Chanel. You could be wearing all designer pieces you want, but if you don't have style, you're nothing. And that's what's unique about fashionistas in Harlem. They do not necessarily wear designer pieces. It's unknown brands, but they're so stylish when they do wear those pieces.
So how did you start from moving from a fashion, doing fashion photography on the streets of Harlem to, being here under the tents?
Like I said, I started taking photos. I had no idea, but coming under the tents and going to fashion week. Of course, I was always fascinated by runway shows, and my first exposure to fashion was as a little boy, opening the pages of Vogue and seeing the first ad that caught my eyes, and I absolutely fell in love with fashion, was Iman in a Yves Saint Laurent Rive Gauche ad, and I loved fashion immediately. So I was always fascinated with Fashion Week. But when I started taking photos in Harlem, I simply started doing that with the idea of putting it on a blog. I threw it up on a blog. I came up with the idea True Fashionista Now. And I started blogging just by taking photos. After that, of course, I got into other social media communities such as Twitter, Pinterest, and Facebook. And it just became something organic in people following me and loving what I do, talking about fashion. And then eventually I started getting invites to events, small little events, launches, smaller shows such as the Harlem Day Festival, which is held in the summertime. I started taking photos there as well. And then eventually I started getting small little invites to other of the tent shows during Fashion Week. And then I started getting bigger invites to Fashion Week. And then here I am at New York Fashion Week.
So what are some of the big shows that you've attended? What makes being under the tent such a special experience?
Under the tent is super special. There's nothing like it. I remember the first time I came to a show under the tent, I'll never forget. It was Tadashi Shoji's runway show, And it's the light, it's the models, it's the people, it's the excitement of music coming on when the runway starts and the models come out. It's something so energetic about it that's unlike anything else at other shows that's not under the tent. But there are differences as well. Mind you, I mean, I've gone to other shows where it's very creative as well, but I really believe there's something magical and special about shows under the tent. And it's great exposure from a business perspective, of course, for brands. Being under the tents gets you great exposure worldwide. It's here where all the bloggers come, all the international press comes from all over the world, and you're guaranteed great top tier fashion exposure.
But it's not cheap. You have to spend, a pretty penny to, really come under the tents, right?
It's very expensive. Absolutely. That's why designers who eventually get here, they think of it as their dream opportunity. It is absolutely a dream because small designers who dream of coming here, they absolutely have to have a huge budget. It costs money. Models, especially models that you want to see in shows that'll probably give you a big press. Probably Giselle, probably Naomi Campbell, I remember years ago. Those models cost money. Music.
Yeah, Naomi's
makeup.
Not coming down the runway for $1. She's got to be 10, 15, 20, for her just to show up, right?
Exactly. But again, like I said earlier, you're guaranteed press with models such as Naomi or other big names that you have today walking the shows, Joan Small, Chanel Iman. If you do get a spot under the tent, and if you have the budget, basically, as long as you have the budget, being under the tents is the place, is what I like to think for great fashion press all over the world.
Now, you're of Caribbean descent. What do you think about getting more people of color under the tents into the fashion business? Because what we're doing this week is we're really trying to, promote diversity in the fashion community. Because you really, just looking at other disciplines like tech, there's like 2% of people of color who actually work in the tech industry. And the same can also be said for fashion. Some of the very famous models almost every year get together and talk about the lack of Black models, Asian models, Hispanic models on the runway. So what do you think we need to do to really start promoting diversity across the board, especially in the fashion community?
One of the things I usually like to go back to when it comes to promoting diversity is education. I think there is a lack of education in regards to some of the accomplishments that African Americans have accomplished in regards to, for example, we're talking about fashion. Diversity too, but we're talking about fashion. Tech too, but we're talking about fashion. One example I like to go back to is the famous Battle of Versailles show, which I myself had to learn about. There are many other instances as well.
Now, for those who may be listening who don't know, tell us about that famous moment in fashion history.
So the Battle of Versailles happened in the 70s. I wasn't even born yet, but it's a fashion show that was held in Paris, and it was a collaboration with designers including Stephen Burrows, Halston, among others. But I mentioned Stephen Burrows only because Stephen Burrows is a very accomplished designer of African American roots. Not a lot of people may know of him, but he was one of the selected designers that was chosen to represent an American brand that went to Paris to showcase American fashion and American designers. It became a huge success for what they did. A huge success because they were against Parisian designers, French designers, such as Dior, Givenchy, Hermes. And it was a huge success because they didn't have all the stage settings and the props and the music that high fashion high fashion goers were used to coming from big names that I just mentioned. They use the simplicity of the American clothes. American clothes, people may not think of it as high fashion, but there is a need for that. There is a niche market all over the world for that. Also, it was a huge success because of the models. Beton Hardison, Pat Cleveland were two of the big models that we still talk about today, that they took to stage their shows, that people were just floored by their beauty and the way they walked in the clothes and presented clothes for Halston and Stephen Burrows. These are things that people need to know to be educated about the value of fashion and contributions that African Americans have made to fashion and the value that African Americans bring to fashion. And one of the reasons why I think there need to be more diversity, because there are a lot of consumers in the African American community that do purchase fashion.
We're big buyers of like Michael Kors, and all of my black girlfriends make a certain amount of money, and so they all have closets full of designer shoes and handbags and everything. But again, like a lot of our faces aren't reflecting the advertising or on the runway. But going back to the Battle of Versailles, I think one of the things that, really made it a special moment in fashion history is because the models, most of them that from the Stephen Burrows show were, women of color, but they also brought a certain flavor and flair to the runway that the Parisian models were. The Parisian models were very, slow walky and, very traditional. And then out comes these, tall, skinny, beautiful black girls. And they basically bring swagger and a style that the Parisian audience hadn't seen before. And just when you watch the documentary, you see people are clapping and cheering and, because that's, again, it's a culture. It was a culture that we Black people brought over to Paris and were able to, really just give it to them and see. They were able to see here's a different style, here's a different flavor, and this is what we bring to the table. And I think that's, one of the big contributions that we, as Black people kind of bring to the world is that, we make everything bright and colorful and bring that flavor that is really just not found, in other places.
This is true. And that's what I continue to advocate to a lot of young fashion bloggers today. I get approached all the time by bloggers who want to go to Fashion Week. And I try to help, but they have no idea about the business side of fashion. And I say it all the time as well. Fashion is a business. We see the glamour side of it, but we don't see the business side of it. And brands are there to make money. From a business perspective, yes, there is a huge challenge for African American models to be more representative on the runways, and it is growing. We see Lupita; she's not a model, but at least she is bringing that idea of having more of a demand for diversity in beauty. Chanel Iman, Tyra Banks has made a huge name for herself by not just being a Victoria's Secret model, but making a business out of beauty and modeling on TV. So she has a new talk show that's about to launch in the fall. So, those ideas are what I try to demonstrate to people who are trying to get into fashion, especially the young ones, and the history of fashion. Beverly Johnson, Beton Hardison, know your history about fashion before you try to do what you do today, because there's so much to know before you want to go where you want to go.
So what have been some shows that you are really looking forward to seeing, during Fashion Week?
This season, there's been a huge shift. As you know, this will be the last season for shows under the tents. And that's a whole other issue in regards to the change in the evolution of fashion under the tents. It's moved from Bryant Parks to Lincoln Center for a few years. And now it's about to be moved from here as well. So there's a lot of new designers that are showing this season. I always look forward to Tadashi Shoji's runway show. I look forward to him because he was the first that was the first runway show that I saw under the tents. And it is still a show that I look forward to because I'm not a huge fashionista of lace, and Tadashi does lace on the runway in a way that's re-envisioned and that's like no other. It's not the way that you would see it. It's not the way your grandma wears it or wore it. And I just look forward to his shows. There are many other shows that I'm going to that I'm excited about. Vivian Toms. I'm excited to Bibi Mohapatra. Bibi Mohapatra is the designer who did the design for Michelle Obama. She just went to India, and you saw her in that floral print dress with a coat. She and the first president got off the plane. It was fashion phenomenon. Everyone's talking about it. So I know it's going to be a big ticketed fashion seat. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
So you mentioned that Fashion Week is this is going to be the last time Fashion Week is at Lincoln Center. Fashion Week seems to have started to jump around different places, and now it's going downtown. Like, how do you think that's going to affect next Fashion Week? And then I wanted to also ask you, what do you think the Black designers really need to do to penetrate, or I guess take advantage of being offsite?
So the fashion industry, you asked me earlier that why is it that it costs so much money, right, for putting on a show under the tents at Lincoln Center? Yes, it does cost a lot of money to stage a show. And that's one of the challenges for designers. So I'm sure a lot of you know that there are a lot of other shows going on in addition to shows under the tent during Fashion Week. There's Made, there's Nolcha, and there's other smaller shows going on all over New York City during this time.
But IMG owns Made now, so it's, they're trying to buy it back, know.
That was one of their strategies, so I'm going to talk about that. Even big designers as well, they're not showing under the tents this season, this being the last season. Diane van Furstenberg, Michael Kors is not showing under the tent. But that's because not they can't afford it, but that's because, slowly shows have begun to be moved from under the tent and they're moving downtown. And like I mentioned earlier, I've been to a lot of shows as well, not under the tents, that's further downtown, that are just as creative and beautiful without costing a lot of money. And I think designers are finding creative ways to put on shows without being so expensive. And this is one of the challenges that IMG is facing. Made is a competitive, or was a competitive organization that still put on shows at Milk Studios. They launched Alexander Wang. They currently show the Blondes, a very big brand with Jennifer Lopez and Ariana Grande. They put on other big shows, Jeremy Scott. It's a more very edgy environment for shows that are held there. It's the underground of creativity, and it's where you get to see the creme de la creme of creativity when you go to those shows.
Milk is a bit more fun. It's like, sometimes if you're down at Milk, you'll see an Asian girl dressed like a bunny, because she's trying to get her picture taken, by one of the photogs to, get on whatever blog. So do you think like fashion shows are still important? Do you think, especially with the rise of social media and all of the major fashion brands on, all of the social platforms, and a lot of them have experimented with doing, virtual one-way shows. Like, do you think eventually we'll see like the fashion show disappear, or is that an experience that you think will always be around?
I think the idea of fashion show will always be around. There's something elite and prestigious about fashion shows that the consumer likes. And I think it is something that designers and businesses continue to battle with. in the rise of social media. There was a big uproar about 2 seasons ago with bloggers not being able to go to Fashion Week anymore.
But they kind of pulled back on that because I see every blogger up under that.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it continues to be a battle because I still think designers are trying to figure out this idea of bloggers and the fashion industry. But it seems to me that there will still be bloggers who are bringing and continue to bring value to fashion brands, and they will continue to have them. They recently featured 3 fashion bloggers on the cover of Lucky magazine. They continue to profile fashion bloggers in fashion spreads and ads on TV. So it just goes to show that fashion bloggers will continue to be a part of the business, fashion business strategy going forward.
So, but, most of those are white fashion bloggers. And, like recently I was reading a blog post about, why do the Black or, Latino fashion bloggers don't get any recognition from the mainstream press. And, I found it very interesting because, a lot of the PR agencies, like they don't, like you'll see like Claire from Fashion Bomb Daily, like she's always a staple underneath of the tents, but that might be it. And there's tons of other fashion bloggers out there who are of color, who have decent traffic, but they're not getting that mainstream attention and that mainstream notoriety. And I know you've been on, like HuffPost Live, and you've done stuff with Christian Siriano. So how do you think Black and Latino fashion bloggers really need to, evolve and become micro brands?
It's a tough question, and it's a tough situation only because I think bloggers are divided on this idea that there is seem to be a more demand for bloggers who are white, yet there are a lot of good African American bloggers out there who do not get the credit they deserve.
But do you think I sometimes feel like when I look at the Black fashion blogger sites in particular, like Claire does a great job, Afrobella, Patrice does a great job, a handful of others, but there's a lot of them out there, especially when you go down into natural hair care. Oh my God, there's like 1 million natural hair care bloggers. So do you feel like we are sabotaging ourselves with having too many fashion blogs and too many people who are just talking about the exact same thing, and many of them really don't have like a unique perspective or unique personality that they're bringing to the table?
That's why I feel that the bloggers are divided, because I really believe, and I know, don't kill me for this, please don't tweet me, keep your opinion to yourself. Again, I've been approached by a lot of bloggers consistently during fashion season looking for opportunities. How do I get in? How do I do this? But also, there are a lot of bloggers who do not get themselves educated on what's going on, what they need to be doing, faux pas, do's and don'ts, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying white bloggers are getting it and they're doing it, but I really feel that, to be successful, you gotta continue to educate yourself and learn the history. And like you said, yes, find that niche. Afrobella, and a lot of Afrobella is one of them. Bevy Smith, they continue to educate themselves, and that's why you see them getting huge opportunities on TV, covering the Oscars and all of that. Because
like Afrobella had her own cosmetics line with MAC. She did a deal with Target. She's consistently being touted by brands, but sometimes I feel like she's and a handful of others are the only ones that they're looking at. But when I look at the vast array of like white bloggers, especially when you even go into like, look at all the money that the vloggers on YouTube are getting for, you know, their audience. Like, I'm still trying to pinpoint like which are any of them brown, because I haven't been able to pinpoint a deal where any of the black, YouTubers are getting like, you know, any money outside of the traffic that they bring to the site. But if you look at, you know, from a white perspective, there's tons of, you know, people with video channels who are making, you know, really decent amounts of money, and they're getting, you know, cross-channel opportunities with, you know, major retailers, and then start to go down the Instagram path as well. Like, there's tons of white fashion bloggers who are doing, you know, deals with Nordstrom's and making, you know, that kind of stuff pop and making money from it, and that's their job, and they're treating it as a business. So, you know, I sometimes feel like we're in this space, we're kind of maybe sabotaging ourselves because we're not treating our blogs as businesses. Like, you have to start to think about, like, how do I take this audience and take this path that I've created for myself, and I've created this micro brand for myself, and make it into a business that turns money. And, you know, like some of the white bloggers I talk to, like, they're really on point. Like, they have Excel spreadsheets and they have voice documentation. So, you know, they have outsourced freelancers who are Instagramming for them, and they treat it like a business. And I feel like, you know, a lot of the beauty bloggers I've met over the years, from going to like things like Blog Her, and, you know, even this is probably like my 10th or 15th time going to Fashion Week, they just don't treat it like a business. And I think that's where, you know, it's detrimental and it's hurtful.
And I agree. And, you know, it all goes back to this idea of the state of our economy as well. You know, being a blogger costs money. You know, white bloggers, yes, they do all the stuff you mentioned. They have managers, they have agencies, and they invest money in what they're doing.
Yeah, you have to reinvest in yourself like you would a business.
And I'm not saying black bloggers don't do that, but it takes a lot to become a successful blogger. A lot of time investment. And I can't tell you how many times, at least for me, my observation, I've met many bloggers. For example, I'll give you a typical example. I've invited maybe 2 bloggers, say, yes, you want to go to a show under the tent? Send them an invite. Getting an invite to New York Fashion Week under the tent, it's a coveted and a huge deal, right? I can't tell you how many times I've invited bloggers who are interested in going. They forget about it. They don't show up. They don't put it on their calendars. Like, hello. And that's just from my experience. Another example, I can't tell you how many times I talk to bloggers and I try to ask about, so what are you doing? Are you going to this class? You know, talk to me about the history of fashion. Do you know who Billie Holiday is? Do you know who Grace Jones is? Do you know who the inspiration for Lady Gaga's fashion perhaps comes from? What does it mean to reference fashion from the 1930s? They don't know none of that stuff. And I'm not belittling black bloggers, but there's a lot you have to know. And that's just talking about fashion and your passion. Let's not, you know, we haven't even begun to talk about the business side of it. But you are, you are in tech, you do more on the social media side. You know how much it takes to be part of social communities, whether it's being on Twitter, whether it's having your own blog, SEO strategies, building your niche market, collaborating with brands for opportunities. It's continuous work.
Yeah, and I think, you know, if you're a micro brand out here, like, you know, my best advice to you is to, you know, invest in yourself. I think if you take anything from this conversation, is invest in your craft and make sure, you know, if I land on your blog, you know, it looks nice and that you've actually written about the fashion show that you've attended. Because I've seen tons of bloggers who go to shows and they don't write a review or post any of the pictures. And, you know, as a PR person or someone who used to do fashion PR, That's how we get paid. Like we have to send our clients an Excel spreadsheet with all of the hits that are from the show. And so if I sent you as a blogger, it'd be nice if you actually wrote about the show. So.
Exactly. And this is true. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So, for example, you communicate with someone on Twitter asking for an invite. I like to say marketing is not just a one-time opportunity. Marketing is exactly what it means. It's continuous.
It's relationships.
It's relationship, but it's continuous communication with someone you're interested in networking with. Another example, I get hit up all the time, only around Fashion Week or when some event is coming up. Oh, can I be your plus one? Know the etiquette of a certain industry. Don't just hit up someone on Twitter or on Facebook just one time. It's a continuous relationship. Those are little things that you need to know. Another example, like you mentioned, yes, know what is expected of you if you go to an event to want to work or collaborate with a brand. Tweet about it, talk about it, write a review, show the PR manager that you're interested in working with them, not just one time, but continuously. And maybe they'll get interested in you. Like you mentioned earlier, yes, I've appeared numerous times on HuffPost Live. And those opportunities came about because I genuinely loved the idea of the direction of where HuffPost was going in regards to their content online and on digital. And at the time, I loved fashion, and I loved talking about it. So,
and you were on with Christian Siriano, right?
Yes, I was. I was on numerous times. The first time I got invited during Fashion Week to talk about fashion and feminism and the runway. Another time I was invited to talk about fashion in do's and don'ts for New Year's Eve. I got invited another time to chat with Christian Siriano for his new HSN line. Another time I got invited to talking about fashion for menswear, dressing for success on Wall Street. So, I continuously worked with HuffPost, talking about the fashion segments and profiles that they talk about as well.
But I think, but I think that's also a lesson is like build those relationships because you want to, have repeat hit ups from these different brands so that you can come, and come to the shows and so you can participate. And that's how you get stuff. And, because I know you get a lot of product from different brands because they want you to review it. And, I think for me, if I go to a show or if I get product from a brand, I make sure that I at least at the very minimum Instagram it or tweet about it, because again, those impressions matter for the PR agency. That's the reports that they're going to run and send back to their client. And if you can consistently be at the top influencer and the top hit in their reports, they'll invite you back again and again. I know we go to a lot of events that we see each other at, and we go a lot of events together, and we make sure that we're diligent about doing our social media piece and just showing the agencies that we value that relationship and we want to come back so that we can have the free food and the free liquor because we love it.
It is true. And, those events are fabulous. Don't get me wrong. I love going to a lot of the events that I get invited to. And I think that's the allure that, people are, bloggers are drawn to. But it is a lot of work. You have to be passionate about it. And one of the things I like to talk about, actually, someone asked me about this during last Fashion Week. During Fashion Week, there's so many parties to go to and I get invited to. I never go. I never go to any Fashion Week parties because I am always...
But sometimes the parties are crazy.
Yeah, because it's always crowded, but it's tiring. Going to parties is networking and it's a lot of work. And there's a lot of parties to go to. But my passion and my objective during Fashion Week is... going to the shows and being ready to take it in take it all in on the runways.
Awesome. Well, Tyrone, I'm going to let you get back to, attending the shows and having fun, and make sure you get a glass of champagne in between shows to, keep the energy up, because that's all we eat and drink during the fashion week. So thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks, Tyrone, for being here.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Tyrone, how can everybody find you all over the interwebs?
You can hit me up on Twitter, TFNow, like True Fashionista Now. That's my handle across all my social media channels. I'm on Snapchat. You can find me there, TFNow. I'm on Instagram, TFNow. You can find me on Vine, TFNow. And that's truefashionistanow.com as well.
Cool. So thank you so much for Tyrone, and we'll have fun at the shows. And so everyone, thank you so much for listening to this special Fashion Week edition of Smart Brown Voices. Make sure that you listen to all the episodes. We've got interviews with makeup artist Joy Fennell, and we've got the two co-founders from a fashion app called Cosign. We have a special interview with April Walker, who is the founder of the historic brand Walker Wear, which Tupac and Biggie and Mike Tyson wore in the 90s, and so much more. So check us out, and make sure you follow us on Instagram at Smart Brown Voices, and check out our Instagram page. I think you'll love it. And if you want to be on the show, send us an email at smartbrownvoices@gmail.com, and we'll book you, as long as you have something interesting to talk about. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Smart Brown Voices with your host, Mr. Mike Street. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts, and make sure to follow us on social media. This has been a Mr. Mike Street production. Join us next time for another edition of Smart Brown Voices, and be inspired.
Yeah.